Hey everyone, I'm Kevin. Today in the JcrOffroad garage, I'm going to walk you through how to install your Bronco Dash Accessory Mount. So we're going to start by removing these handles on each side. These are held in with 4 screws. Now, in your factory Bronco toolkit, they're going to give you a driver just like this. This is labeled an IP30. It's just a Torx Plus, essentially. So if you just have a standard Torx 30 and not that Bronco toolkit handy, you can get the job done. You just want to use some caution in there because that standard Torx is going to be a little loose in that fastener and you don't want to strip any of these out. So you'll go ahead and remove all 4 of these screws. And then there's just going to be 2 clips here at the front edge of this holding it in place. So you want to pull gently out, using caution not to damage those. Next, we're going to need to remove this little upper speaker cover here. For that, I'm using a plastic pry tool so I don't damage any of this softer plastic dash material. If you don't have one of these, it can always be done with a metal like pick or screwdriver. You can also wrap that in tape or something to give you a temporary soft surface. So right here, just to the outside of this radius, there's a small cutout in this panel that should allow you to get underneath it. And then you can begin prying these up. Just work your way around nice and gently. Again, so you don't damage any of the plastic clips along the way. And then that should pop free as well. Now with the speaker cover removed, you're going to need to remove this screw here using your 7mm socket. Then up here next to your factory accessory ready mounting location, if you reach down into these pockets, you're going to feel a screw on each side. Those can be removed with a T20 Torx. Then we're going to need to remove this factory switch panel. This just has 4 clips holding it in place. So I'm going to get under here with my thin plastic pry tool and start working this front edge up. And then do the same thing here in the back to get this to pop free. And then you can simply release this thumb tab on the wiring harness, pull that connector out, and set this aside temporarily. Now with the switch panel out, you'll come just to the right of this wiring harness, and with a 7mm socket, this screw can be removed. Next, over here under the passenger side of this dash cover, you're going to have 3 of these little plastic covers that need to be removed. You can get under this back corner with your plastic pry tool, get that to pop down, and then those should just hang in place like that. And then there's going to be another 7mm screw head up here that needs to be removed under each of those covers. Now with all that hardware removed, you can kind of work from one side across, and this should simply slide back and can be set aside. So with this top cover section out of the way, you're going to have 5 screws here to remove that hold this front section in place. For these, again, just grab your 7mm socket. Now this is hooked in place still with factory clips on each far end under these A-pillar covers, but this allows us to lift this up enough that we can access and see what's underneath here, so that when we drill through this top cover, we know we're not damaging any circuit boards or wiring or anything in there. Now we are going to have to drill a hole here through this top cover, as we've already kind of mentioned. To locate where you're drilling that hole, you're simply going to put your mount in place, and then you can just loosely start this button head mounting bolt, and that'll hold it fairly close to where it's going to be when it's tightened down in the vehicle. And then take a marker, come down through the USB mounting hole, and just trace that out onto the dash. Then this can again be removed. And then the mark you made here on the dash, you'll just go right to the center of that when drilling your hole. Okay, so then again, using that mark, I'm just going to be using a step drill so that I can make a nice round hole here in the center of the marks we made previously. Now the nice thing about drilling a round hole large enough to get these through, as opposed to like using a Dremel or something and cutting out a square hole, is if you ever choose to remove this later on, you can just get a 5/8 hole plug, pop it right in there, and it'll look pretty close to factory if that's ever removed. So again, just taking a peek underneath, making sure you're not going to contact any wiring as you drill through. Now once you've drilled that out, you can kind of clean up your mess and then just make sure that your USB connectors are going to pass through that hole. Now one thing we did want to mention while we're right here and have this all torn apart is we have heard of some customers having this actual factory accessory mounting location come a little bit loose in their dash. And worst case scenario, that means the nut on the bottom of here falls off and down into your dash somewhere and you got to go digging for it. So since we already have this far apart, it's a good idea to just check this, just try and wiggle it, make sure that it's not rotating back and forth in this mounting location. If it is at all, you just want to make sure you get underneath here with something, get a hold of that nut, and get that tightened up before bolting your damn mount in place. Now, lastly, before you actually bolt this down in place or route your wires through this hole, you want to make sure that you get the USB ends through the mount before putting them down into the dash panel, because obviously once these are routed all the way down through the dash, you're not going to be able to get this larger connector end snapped in place here on your mount. So once you have it snapped in like that, you can go ahead and start feeding these down through the top cover. Now you're going to have to work on the actual routing here in a couple minutes, but you can get these down through the cover, check the alignment of the hole you just drilled. Now when it comes to actually routing those USB cables, there's obviously some stuff that's going to go on behind the dash here that you're not necessarily going to be able to see in this video, but I'm going to walk you through it the best I can so you can get yours routed just like ours. So first, you're going to want to make sure you have this open if you haven't done it already. And then to drop it down even further, there's just a tab like this on each side that you can push in with your finger, and that'll swing all the way down. And then to actually route these, what you want to do, again, just lift this up as far as you're comfortable with so you're not damaging any of those clips. And then you can take the cables, pull as much slack back out as you need to get them routed the way you want. And basically, as soon as you get the cable underneath through the hole in this factory panel here, underneath the top cover, you're going to want to try and push this to the passenger side. So get your USB connector through and push straight over. And then reaching up through this glove box hole, you can find the cable at the same time by feeling for this air duct that runs to the vent here. So you're reaching your arm basically straight up and over just a little bit to the center of the vehicle so that you can catch the USB end of the cable as you push it across. So what you're left with will be both cables running straight over to the passenger side above this air duct and then down through this glove box opening so that you can work with them further down here. So now that you've got your USB wires routed down here, how you proceed is kind of going to depend on how you want to power these outlets up here. So if you want to be able to plug things in up here on your mount and have them be directly linked to the vehicle for things such as Apple CarPlay or something similar, you're going to want to route these over under the center stack of the dash, likely through this lower bottom panel that's easily accessed and easily removed, and be able to plug them in here to your center factory USB location. Another option you have is to do something similar to what we're choosing to do. We just picked up a 12 volt to USB converter block, and we're simply going to be using this along with the factory accessory wiring that's already in place here underneath the dash, so that we can run power up to these and have them powered all the time. There's another thing you can do there so that you can power those and also run them just through the factory switch. So we'll kind of walk you through the steps for how you can do both options. So as some of you may already know, along with your factory accessory switches in the overhead console, Ford has provided you with wires routed throughout the vehicle that you can access for situations just like this. So these two are just up under the passenger footwell, kind of below this glove box area. There's a brown wire with a white stripe that we're going to be using, along with what looks like a solid white wire. So what I'm going to do here is tie in the power or red wire from our converter block to this, and then take the black wire from that converter block and route it to a convenient factory grounding location here under the dash. So the other end of those wires you tied into under the dash is going to pop out right here in this rear corner by the firewall on the driver's side. So you just need to come up here, find the wire you're tied into. So if you're choosing to wire these USB ports into one of those factory auxiliary switches, you're going to need to look up the wiring color coding for those in your owner's manual on your factory touchscreen display, and then just tie the brown and white wire, for example, that we're using in to the appropriate color over on the other side right here for that switch wiring harness. Now our plan is to run these to full-time power. So right here at my brown and white wire, I'm going to tie in and run this direct out to the battery. Now if you plan to do it this way, you just want to make sure that you're using something like this fuse block that I plan to wire in right here, so that you have fuse protection on your circuit and you're not just direct to battery power. Okay, so once you've finished all your wiring and wire routing, you want to be sure to come back up here and plug something in, check that you have the appropriate power at both USB ports, and then we can begin reassembling this dash. Just a note right here, before you get crazy and tighten this all the way in place, you will need to be able to lift this up out of here so that you can tighten these two screws right next to this accessory mount during that reassembly process. With the two factory screws under here tight, we can go ahead and do the final install on your 1/4-20 button head here, and tighten that down with your 5/32 hex. So once your dash is all reassembled, you got a nice new place to mount and power all your accessories. So if you have any questions about this install or any other product we offer here at JCR Off-Road, feel free to reach out to us. You can call us at 269-353-1184 or send us an email at info@jcroffroad.com.